Yes, we said it was going to be a two-parter, Ben, and god damn it, it's going to be a two-parter.
Oh, okay. Can we just talk about beta males for the first 90 minutes, and
Hour?
then
Yes,
30
yes,
minutes we'll just tell
absolutely.
the rest of the story and wrap it up, and then get the out before anybody can think about how bad it was.
I guess I'll just start with this episode of Words About Books is brought to you by our patrons. Oh, patrons get access to bonus cuts, bonus episodes that Ben swears he's working on editing, and our monthly polls where you get to vote on books or short stories for us to read. So if you're interested, swing on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/WABpod. I'm Nate, he's Ben. The book theme here for this month's poll was rereading a book to see if it holds up. And before you say anything, Ben, or before you say anything more, we probably should have recorded this earlier. Do you want to do a quick rubric as if we haven't already read the book on what we think the score will be or would have been?
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
I could tell you what I would have thought before I reread it. I can safely say that.
So yeah, let's quickly just go through the rubric on what we thought we were going to get.
Okay, so we're starting up front with the rubric. This is going to be terrible for any new listeners. So the rubric has 5 categories. If you've never heard us, if you've never gotten to the end of an episode before, it's content and ideas, organization, use of language, personal preference, and recommendation strength. So content and ideas. This is like how original the plot is, how well it works, how well character arcs go. So what would you have given it for content and ideas?
I think I would have given it a 4.
I agree. I think I would have given it a 4. I remembered this being really original, really funny, and charming. Like a lot of the
Clearly
characters had heart.
developed. Yeah. I remember this being a very charming book.
Yeah.
I guess we
Organization.
should say it's a dirty job by Christopher Moore. Did I mention that already? You read the title, you know what we're talking about. Organization, I think it was probably going to be a 4. I don't remember it being too slow or the pacing was off.
I actually would go 3. I remembered the end feeling really rushed. So
Yeah,
I would
that's
say
fair.
there was a pacing issue that I was aware of even the first time I read it.
Yes, I did not remember that being as rushed as maybe it was. So,
use of language.
Yeah, I think I would have gone with a 4 there as well. I think Christopher Moore has a solid grasp of the English language, and he can develop characters with a lot of charm and heart with the use of his words.
Yeah, I think I would have gone with a 4 as well. I remembered it being kind of like witty, jokey, and just not the sort of thing I was used to reading in books.
All right, personal preference.
I think back in the day, I would have gone with a 4.
Okay.
Again, I really didn't like the ending.
I think back in the day, I would have gone with a 5. I remember I read this book actually twice during my undergraduate years, so I know for sure that I was a huge fan.
Yeah. So recommendation strength.
I would have gone with a 4. Strong recommendation to genre fans, people who like comedy, and weak recommendation in general, because I had recommended this to people.
I actually would probably have gone with a 5 because this was, for a long time, really until we started doing this podcast, one of the books I most recommended to people. And my paperback has been so beaten up by lending to other people, it is also probably my most read book that I own.
Wow, so I scored like an 80, and you got a 76?
76 or so, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's about 4 out of 5, which is what I had given it on Goodreads.
Yeah, I actually gave it a 5-star on Goodreads. And 80 out of 100, pretty damn good, especially because
that would put it up with
55 is.
Yeah, that would put it up there with the best books we've ever read. Now,
yeah,
here on Words About Books. So we have a mission. We believe that reading books is not just a way to pass the time, but a divine punishment God has inflicted upon man for eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And we have sought to prove that while people may think they enjoy what they read, it's actually very bad. And we are guilty of the hubris occasionally of enjoying a book ourselves. And until now, we have only ruined books for other people. I got a lot of comments about the Mortal Instruments. I had a friend, I asked, I was telling her, like, you should check out that Shadowhunter show. It's actually kind of fun. And I was like, do you still like the Mortal Instruments? She's like, yeah, I did until I listened to your show. And you wouldn't shut up about incest for an hour.
That'll teach you to like things.
Yeah. She's like, now I know that Cassandra Clare really likes incest, and that kind of hurts. But so I think it's only fair. I think it's only fair that this time we ruin a book for us.
Yeah, we did.
And boy did rereading it ruin this book for me. I don't know. So, okay, the book was written in 2006. It's a comedy book. I went in with certain expectations. I expected that the book would have aged poorly in places. I remember certain elements of comedy that didn't work for me, even the first time I read it, and we'll talk about that. But I thought, overall, it'll be nostalgic. Maybe I'll read it and find that in 2023, I might not recommend it to people because the relevance has changed. Humor is supposed to be transgressive, and what was transgressive in 2006 is no longer transgressive in 2023. And I generally expected, though, that a lot of the fun of the story would remain because my brain had done that thing it does where it whittled it down to what worked.
The good bits.
In my memory. And I had forgotten that the majority of the book is Christopher Moore practicing his tight five for his stand-up by just waxing philosophic about beta males for literal hundreds of pages.
It's, this, instead of being called A Dirty Job, it could have been called Beta Male, a Charlie Asher story.
Beta male, a beta story about beta males. Yeah, so I guess the benefit of having this book ruined for me is I have grown a lot in the 15 years since I've read this. I read this in 2008. When did you read it?
I think around that time is when you recommended it to me. I remember walking from campus to a bookstore to purchase it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, around that time. And then I think I reread it 2 or 3 years after that.
And I have to admit, like, when I was in college, I read a lot of Christopher Moore. I read most of the San Francisco stuff. For those who don't know, Christopher Moore is a writer of many, many comedy books. He's like a probably one a year novelist. And he has a kind of shared universe, which in 2006 wasn't a thing literally everyone was trying to do.
Right.
So that it was kind of neat to see characters from one book appear in another book that wasn't really a sequel or a prequel or anything. They usually had some paranormal element, which I liked. So I've read Coyote Blue, You Suck, Bloodsucking Fiends, Lamb, A Dirty Job, obviously, and I want to say I read another one. And I liked all of them.
Bloodsucking Fiends, A Dirty Job, Lamb. And I went, I think when it actually came out, the year it came out, I read Fool.
I own Fool, but I never read it.
I own the sequel to Fool, and I never read that.
I remembered quite liking all of these. You were asking for recommendations, or not recommendations, but stuff for the podcast schedule, like what are my picks? And for a long time, I thought about doing one of these Christopher Moore books, but I thought to myself, specifically about A Dirty Job, there was some stuff in A Dirty Job that I did remember that gave me pause about recommending it on this podcast.
Yeah, I think you were planning on doing a Christopher Moore book, probably this one in season 1, but we went with sorcery instead.
Yeah, because I was like, I just don't know if I want to go there. Because I was like, I remember it being funny, but I could also remember it being a little bit problematic, and I didn't really know in season 1 how I would handle that. But I know now. I know now. So I'll give a really quick upfront definition of like the back of the book version of the plot, and then we'll get into it a little bit more closely, and we'll sort of pull apart some of the stuff that works and stuff that doesn't work. The general premise of A Dirty Job is that there is a man named Charlie Asher who is a beta male, and we will talk a little bit more about what Christopher Moore means by beta male, who has a pregnant wife with their first child. She gives birth, and very shortly, a few hours after giving birth, she dies of some kind of like embolism or
clot
aneurysm
in the brain, yeah.
And he then has to try to figure out how to go on after having suddenly lost the love of his life on what should have been the happiest day of their marriage. And that doesn't sound like a good place to start a comedy. And
and you would be correct. But
it's supposed to be about love, loss, and how we grieve and deal with death, and how maybe death is not supposed to be this huge big thing to be feared. That's sort of where this book is going. Now, Charlie winds up seeing glowing objects in his secondhand store. He runs a secondhand store. And he finds out that those objects...
Summary already?
I'm getting into the back of the book. Those objects are souls.
Okay.
He is a death merchant. His job is to collect objects that contain people's souls and make sure that those objects find their way into the right hands of the person who is supposed to inherit that soul and serve as its next vessel. And if he fails to do that, bad things will happen. The darkness will rise. And he has to do all of this while raising his daughter, who can point at things, say the word kitty, and they fall over dead. So that's the comedic scenario. This hopelessly inept man winds up with this really grave job and has to figure out how to navigate the complexities of that.
Well, this has been Words About Books. The episode was a little shorter than I thought. Check us out on Twitter. We're WAB Pod, I think. And Instagram is Words About Books Pod. Is that right? It's different on Instagram. So
the first thing we need to really dive deep into, unfortunately, is beta male.
All right. I was gonna do a thing where I would tell you, Ben, could you describe Charlie Asher's personality, but also could you only do it in 2 words, please? And could you say those words just over and over again?
Inconsistent, neurotic.
That's fair. That's fair.
So Christopher Moore, for A Dirty Job, was really, really locked into the idea beta males. Now, this is 2006. For those who were very young or perhaps not yet alive, in 2006, beta male and alpha male and all that, it didn't really carry quite the same weight, I guess, as it does today. We didn't have a thriving public incel community in 2006. I'm sure they existed, but they stayed in the dark corners where they belonged.
Yeah.
So a beta male in 2006 refers to basically a man with anxiety or anxious tendencies who may be a little neurotic, maybe definitely has trouble meeting women, and just not confident. And the alpha, of course, is the athlete, the confident man.
Chad.
We didn't have Chads yet. We didn't have Chads and Stacys yet. It was 2006. That meme did not exist yet. Nobody had been red-pilled. That was still just a fun Matrix reference. When you thought of Red Pill in 2006, you still thought of Morpheus, not some weirdo 4chan user who was probably going to shoot up a school.
It was a simpler time. It was a better time.
It was a simpler time. I graduated high school in 2006. This is how old I am.
That's
so
weird.
I forgot how much of this book is about beta males.
Me too.
Okay, I was going to ask, were you surprised? Like,
I remembered some of the jokes. I didn't remember that at like a sixth of the entire total page length was beta males and stand up about beta males and most of his personality being waved away by being a beta male, and he has friends or coworkers who are also beta males.
Here's the tough thing about talking about comedy. Like, when you explain a joke, it's not funny, and it's very easy to make fun of a comedy you don't like by just explaining all the jokes. Like, I would use the example of, say, I think we both like Austin Powers enough as a comedy.
Yeah, the first one and parts of the second one and not the third one. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Austin Powers is, if you just break it down to what's actually happening in the movie, it's a story about a serial sexual harasser who is incompetent and bumbles his way through a series of like near
the goofy version of a suave 60s spy, but he has to exist in the modern day. Comedy ensues.
Yeah, but the jokes are like, the joke could be construed as sexist. There's a lot of lame, like, penis humor, stuff like that.
There's a lot of lame jokes. I mean, even back then. But I think Mike Myers liked to throw everything just kind of at the wall, though. So
I don't have a huge problem with that. I know if we put Austin Powers under a microscope, you're going to find a lot of problematic shit, a lot of shit that's just not funny, and a lot of things that haven't aged well. That's kind of what I expected going into this, but like the whole beta male thing, not only has it aged poorly in terms of like the incels and shit, it has also never been funny in this book, which is why my brain forgot it entirely. He stops the book dead repeatedly to just wax philosophic about beta males.
Did you not think that knowing about the evolution of beta males, how they would wait behind when the alphas went off to war to bone them some grieving widows, and thus ensure the continued existence of beta males? Did you not think that was like very important to both the plot and to your understanding?
I thought, of the beta male jokes, that's one of the funnier ones. It just never stops, though. If he had done the beta males stood back and boned the widows while the alphas went off to war, that would have been fine. And finish with that. You're done now, right?
Well, actually, Ben, I've got a few, like 15, maybe like 20 more.
Got like a whole set ready on beta males?
I've got quite the list I've been working on. So.
I'm actually thinking of doing an entire Netflix special on beta males. Yeah, it's the thing. So there's that joke. Then there's another joke where it's like beta males invented fire and alphas invented the 3rd degree burn. And it's like, okay, that's a little weaker. But okay, sure.
Yeah, the problem is, instead of doing a one and done punchline, it's, all right, now that I've told you about that, let me tell you my next one. And my next one.
But then there's another one where, and these are, I think, his exact words, slutty women are responsible for the perpetuation of the beta gene by granting beta males pity sex or something. And it's like, oh, okay, well, now that one was kind of offensive. You needed to get off the topic, and you just stayed on the topic until you made it really offensive. And that's going to repeat itself in a few other themes as well. So the book opens up with the long diatribe about Charlie being a beta male. One of the many long diatribes. And then his wife dies. And the book does a very good job, I think still, of conveying the shock, the depression, the confusion of that situation. Christopher Moore obviously talked to people who had lost somebody. Possibly he had lost somebody himself. I'm not sure.
I think I read that somewhere. Yeah.
It felt good. It didn't feel good to read, but it felt real. The grief part of the book felt real. And, then it's got to be a comedy.
Well, yeah. The best medicine is laughter, Ben. Duh.
Perhaps.
Everyone knows that.
Perhaps. So we get to the wake, and his wife was Jewish.
Yeah. I like where this is going.
Do you?
Yeah. Why not?
And he has to sit Shiva with her parents, and he doesn't know what that means, despite being 30 years old and married to a Jewish woman. And so there's a whole big thing about, like, Shiva, is that the god of destruction? I'll go.
Shih Tzu?
Yeah, is a shiksa a shih tzu? Those two words sound similar. That he's afraid that his daughter will be a shiksa. That's like the one word he has learned, and so he's trying to do all the Jewish stuff right, but this is where, like, he's out of his depth, and he's talking to his sister. By the way, did you know his sister was a lesbian? She is a lesbian woman who she does not wear traditionally feminine clothing, and she dates women because she's a lesbian.
Oh my god. Well,
were you aware that she was a lesbian? It's subtle.
She wears suits? Wait, hold on. Okay, hold on. So I knew she was a lesbian right around the time that she brought home a woman, but before that, there were, like, no clues at all.
Really? Because, like, I feel like literally anytime the sister is mentioned in this book, literally.
They have to mention what she's wearing, or that she's going to borrow Charlie's suits, or that she's going to go to yoga to attract other women.
Yeah, the punchline of Charlie's sister is supposed to be comic relief, and the punchline is she's a lesbian.
Oh man, that's a hilarious joke. You know what I hope happens? I hope he tells it multiple times so that it just gets funnier every time.
One of the jokes, this is a joke, setup and punchline. She's borrowing his suits. She asks how she looks or something, and he says, "You look like David Bowie, famously androgynous." And she's okay with that. That's the joke.
Yeah, she says, "Aw, he's my favorite."
The only man I was ever attracted to. That's the joke. Because he's androgynous.
Yeah. It's all great. I don't know. 5 stars, right?
I have to say, because this is going to come up, like, again and again, I'm not angry at the book. I'm not disappointed in the book from any kind of, like,
we're not trying to cancel Christopher Moore.
I'm not offended.
We're not. No.
I'm just not laughing. Like, I guess I've just known enough gay women that it's not ridiculous that they don't want to dress in a feminine way.
I dated a gay woman. Gotcha.
you do have me there.
Yeah, that's right.
But, like, I just, like, her partner's more femme, and she's a little more androgynous, but okay. I mean, that's fine. People do that. Like, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, people do that. That's actually normal. That's not even, and I don't even think that's a 2023 thing. Maybe for me it is, I guess. In 2008, I was 20. I didn't know a ton of gay people yet, but So maybe I laughed, but I can't imagine I laughed every time.
It does come off a lot.
It's kind of funny that she steals his suits because it bugs him, but not because she wants to wear a man's suit. And it just never stops. And then they get through, I don't know, how do you want to summarize this? I have a lot of things like I want to specifically talk about, and none of them are the summary because nothing happens for so long.
No, Ben, we're gonna do this in a way that everyone can feel our pain.
Okay, well, you go. You tell me where you would go from here.
Okay, well, first I want to mention that his wife died, and when Charlie like went home, or his wife told him to go home. That's kind of weird because like
Yeah, I
wasn't
thought
leaving
so.
the hospital without a child and my wife. So
when I was 20,
I'm not leaving.
When I was 20, I could safely say that flew over my head. I had no frame of reference for what the protocol was. But yeah, he's instructed to leave because he's bothering everybody because he's neurotic.
Yeah, and then he needs to give Rachel, that's his wife, her favorite CD to her, and he goes back inside and finds a very tall, very black man standing over her bed. Ben, do you want to talk about Minty Fresh, or do you want to save that for later?
Oh, well, Minty Fresh was the next problem I had with the book, actually.
There you go.
I don't. Okay, you want me to just talk
real
about...
real quick. Charlie's like, what the hell are you doing here? And he's like, holy shit, you can see me? Oh, this is really bad. You're not supposed to be able to see me. I gotta go. And Minty Fresh, that's his name. We'll find out a little later.
That is his
He's
Christian
also a death
name.
merchant. Yes, that's his real name and everything. And he is also a death merchant, and he sends a book to Charlie that gets stolen, and eventually Charlie gets it, and it's about being the death merchant and what that entails. All right, Ben, let's talk about Minty.
So
where do you want to
start?
The
first thing. So Charlie's a racist.
Ooh, yeah, he.
Right?
Sure. Picture Steve Carell from The Office trying to talk to a black man.
Yeah.
Trying to talk street to a black guy because he's black. So that's how they talk, I guess.
So, like, the book forgets about, like, he has many normal conversations with Minty Fresh until, like, the end of the book where he suddenly decides he has to start jive talking.
Well, he starts talking jive at the beginning of his meeting with Minty, and then, yes, he has normal conversations until the end when he has to go back to jive talking.
So, the first thing they notice about Minty Fresh is that he is taller than you would expect, and his skin is very dark. And that is the joke.
And he wears a mint green suit.
Please clap.
He's a tall, very dark-skinned man who wears a mint green suit. That's the joke.
And it's a joke that comes up multiple times, like all the other jokes.
I remembered this was the reason I did not do this book in season 1, was Minty Fresh, actually. Because even on my first reading, I was like, I feel like this goes too far. I don't understand why Charlie is so awkward around Minty Fresh. Like, I have never in my life encountered a black person and decided I needed to try to, like, mimic some pattern of speech I saw on TV.
Steve Carell from The Office.
And, like, okay, here's the thing, though. Steve Carell from The Office is a jackass.
Yes, you're not. A lot of the humor is kind of, at his expense.
Yeah. The Office doesn't open with Steve Carell watching his young wife die during childbirth.
No, no, it actually opens with him pulling a supposed prank on the secretary, saying that he's firing her, and she breaks down in tears, and he starts laughing and says, "Gotcha," and she does not take it well, obviously.
You do come to like him by the end by seeing him as a multifaceted human being who has both good and bad, but it sets a tone of this guy's an asshole who thinks he's funny and he's really not. The book doesn't really know what Charlie is, does it?
No, not really.
You start off on the most sympathetic possible note. Like, Charlie has experienced one of the worst things a human being can experience. And you're primed to feel sympathy for him. So when he's just like overtly racist, you're like, what? I still feel bad for you as a human being, but like, please don't do that. I can't have that. So what did you think about that the first time you read it? Did you catch that the first time you read it, or did that fade into the background?
I think that just kind of faded into the background. I don't know how, because I'm looking at my notes. It goes, extraordinarily tall black man dressed completely in mint green, and at that point Charlie lost his mind. Next highlight, the tall black man. It's like, next highlight, or 2 highlights down. Oh sure, go black on me, play the ethnic card.
Yeah. I texted you about that. I was reading it and I texted you that I took a picture of my book and I was like, what the fuck is this line? This is so bad.
Everything, if we don't do our jobs, everything could go dark, become like the underworld. Maybe it's Oakland, Charlie said. What's Oakland? The underworld.
And then I think Minty Fresh says motherfucker, and Charlie's like, oh sure, go black on me. And it's like, oh my god. I don't think I don't think Christopher Moore said anything in this book with hate in his heart. But I wouldn't have written it myself, I can tell you that. It's just, it's not a good look. It's just not a good look. So, I guess we should move on to the other main characters. So we've covered Jane, we've covered Minty Fresh. Who else is there at this point in the book?
There's Lily, the teen goth girl who works at his store.
Okay. Lily
She starts out 16 years old.
She does sure start out 16 years old. You better believe that's going to be a problem. So, that's not uncommon among authors. Every book we read, it seems like it has some kind of weird sex shit. And this is no exception.
Yep, it always happens to be there somehow.
Yeah, authors are weird people. Now, the Lily stuff, I have problems with the Lily stuff. I will admit, on a first read, when I was 20, when I was much closer in age to Lily than to Charlie, I didn't notice how problematic this was. Which goes to illustrate how problematic it is. Because somebody close in Lily's age does not appreciate how stupid the situation is. But somebody who's Charlie's age really should. Now, Charlie doesn't do anything with Lily, but he does describe her. Oh God, what's the line? This is one of the worst.
Closer, a weird.
She's in between baby fat and baby bearing.
Yeah, I highlighted that.
Yeah, I didn't highlight it. I just remembered it.
Yeah,
it's so goddamn creepy. Charlie's 30.
Yeah, this has helped me think about perspective, right? This is supposedly from Charlie's perspective. When you write something like that, I don't think
that's how Charlie sees her.
Yeah,
and she's his employee. She works in his store.
Yeah, she does.
That's worse.
Yeah, it is.
Now, again, this is like the Austin Powers thing. Austin Powers objectifies women and treats them like shit.
Well, his arc is that he learns to love only one woman, Ben,
Yes,
until the sequel.
because yeah, I know, but the sequel's just the first one with but the girl does all the stuff the guy did, and it's just
Yes.
role reversed. So the thing is, it's okay if Charlie learns his lesson, because like Charlie's raising a daughter, and sadly,
I do want to talk about that.
for a lot of men, that is when they learn to respect women.
Well, I think that is sad, but I'd rather they learn it then than just never learn
Never,
it at all.
yeah, better late than never.
Yeah.
Him raising a daughter is just a built-in way to confront that issue. Like if
I
Charlie
thought it
doesn't
was
respect,
a built-in way of advancing the time.
oh god,
I think that was its primary function, because his daughter is not really much of a character when she should be, and raising his daughter should be a lot of the plot, because his daughter is the one thing that still links him to Rachel, and he has to raise her, and like you'd think that would be more important to him, but a lot of the plot is him calling someone to watch his daughter so that he can run out to go do death stuff or whatever.
So I haven't looked this up. Do you think Christopher Moore has children?
I don't think so.
That would be my guess as well. Because I mentioned this before. I have a sister who's almost 11 years younger than me. And I feel like probably even at 20, I had a more realistic idea of what raising kids was like. He's like never there. He's never raising her, despite being a single father who works where he lives.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that. We'll talk about Sophie a little later when she's a little older.
Yeah. What else do you want to say about Lily, if anything?
Nothing until later.
Okay.
Lily's goth.
How about Ray?
Yeah, Ray is an ex-cop whose neck is fused because he got shot in the neck or something.
I think that's what happened. Yeah.
And he can't turn his head, and he lives on disability, but he works in Charlie's store in exchange for not having to pay his rent, because if he were working, then he would lose his disability, even though he's perfectly capable of working.
As evidenced by the fact that he has been working for many years, yes.
Yeah, so Ray's running a disability scam, and he's constantly looking at websites. There's like mail order bride type websites.
Yep.
One was
Ukrainian girls love you. It spells ugly.
Yeah.
At least that was a joke. At least that was a joke.
At least that was a joke. Now the Filipino website he starts with, he winds up meeting a Filipino woman, or he thinks it's a woman, but it's really a man, and their name is Eduardo.
Got an Adam's apple. Haha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now see that
And he asks not so subtly if she's got a schlong in between her legs. She's packing some man meat. She's got a little bit of sausage in between there. If she's got a dick, if she's got a penis, Ben, do you understand? Do you get it? Is it funny yet? Again, if you said it once, maybe it'd be funny, maybe it wouldn't. You didn't need to say it 7 times, though, because it definitely won't be funny on the 7th time you say it.
Oh, exactly. Like the simple joke of a skeevy dude going after women, winding up with a guy, feeling slightly violated himself. That's funny because a bad thing happened to somebody who deserved it. And, I say bad thing. I mean, like, a thing he didn't like happened to him. But when you constantly go double down on it, it's like, I get it. I get it. Ray is not interested in men, and he is talking to a man because he is stupid. Haha. If we could talk about it for just 3 paragraphs fewer, it would be funnier.
Yes. It would work for more people, for sure.
Yeah, you know, some idiot that Unsighted has been covering said brevity is the soul of wit, which means shut up and you'll be funnier.
Shut up.
Okay, we got Ray. Let's see. Mrs. Ling. That's a big one for me on the second read. So on the first read, I don't think I picked up on how bad the stuff with Mrs. Ling got.
I thought it was a little funny quirk thing, and she was in the background. I don't remember her being in the book nearly as much as she was.
Yeah.
She's in there a lot. She's almost a main character with how much she shows up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She gets her own, like, where are they now at the end. So Mrs. Ling is one of two women who will watch Sophie while Charlie works. And Mrs. Ling is of China. I think she's from China. She's not just of Chinese descent. And the joke here is a joke I imagine we've all heard, or a stereotype I imagine we've all heard, and that is Chinese cuisine uses a wide variety of meat from different animals than we in the United States would typically expect to be used.
You know, the most recent time I heard this?
COVID?
Right at the end of 2019 / beginning of 2020.
Yeah. Which, again, it didn't age well. There's a lot of stuff going on there with Asian racism. But it's not a joke I would make. I don't know if it's a joke he stands by. But, you know, if you go into like an Asian market, you will see stuff that you would not see in your grocery store, probably. And that's funny, I guess, to a point. I mean, it's just a weird observation. I'm going to preface this by saying, like, I lived in an area for a long ass time where, like, half of my school was absent on the first day of small game season. I have seen people eat squirrels, groundhogs, beaver, crocodiles. This is not like a phenomenon unique to Chinese people. But I can understand why a white man who's never left San Francisco might be a little shocked the first time he walks into an Asian market. But the joke with Mrs. Ling, where it starts to cross the line, is that Sophie, the daughter, develops this power where she can point at something and kill it. And Charlie keeps getting her pets, and the pets keep dying. And Mrs. Ling keeps spiriting away the pet carcasses and butchering them and eating them.
Yeah.
That's the joke.
Again, maybe it lands for you. It didn't land for me. Maybe it lands for you, but it probably doesn't land for you on the 20th time that it happened. I think that later in the book, we'll talk about this, when the spy is coming to get Sophie, and suddenly he's whisked away, and you find that he's boiling in a pot of water. I was like, you know what? I'll give you that one. That was something that it was plot relevant, more than just like a funny ha-ha joke at the expense of this Chinese woman. And he was like, yeah, it's wearing trousers. Because, you know, trousers? Like, where are you, my dad, Charlie? Fuck, man. I haven't heard anyone Charlie's age say trousers. But yeah, it's like, why is the duck wearing pants? Special breed. It's what we make for the authentic Chinese cuisine, but we don't want to give it to you guys. We just get... Oh, God, that reminds me. What's with all the White Devil stuff?
The White Devil thing is funny. I mean, she teaches him some Mandarin, and, like, one of the phrases she teaches him that is, like, good morning is actually, like, hello, I'm an ignorant white devil. Which would be funny. Yeah. But the stuff with the pets, it just gets, like, once might be shocking and transgressive. Right. You might get that, like, Family Guy bro shock value humor out of me. Second time, it's like, okay. Third time.
There's literally like 20 instances.
Fourth time.
And by that time, it's just like,
Fifth time.
I get it. Let's move on. And the other problem is that's her entire personality. That's also her character arc.
Yeah. Her character arc
she renounces eating meat and becomes a vegetarian at the end. We'll get to that part, but yeah.
Yeah. So that, to me, that one crossed a line. At a certain point, you're just taking this stereotype and you're not really playing with it anymore. Look, like I said, I come from a place where I know people who have eaten squirrels. They shot them. They hunted them. They ate them. They didn't steal the dead bodies of hamsters, Like,
yeah.
That's
they make a roadkill pizza like, I don't know, like 40 miles from here, something like that.
There's a difference between like a person who wouldn't waste meat or a person who doesn't see an animal you see as a pet. Like if you know somebody who has eaten dog or something, that's a thing. But like just this compulsion to take,
like, I'm gonna eat your goldfish and your hamster.
She sees his dogs and she's like thinks about dividing them up into like the different cuts of meat, and it's like,
well, she also tries to murder the dogs, but they're hellhounds. We'll get to that, and that fails to do any damage.
Look, man,
and it's like, I think you might have taken that a little too far when you started trying to brain them.
It's like she's like she's described like how vampires are addicted to blood. Like she must have all meat she sees. Like, you eat beef, you don't. Like, you're capable of petting a cow, right? And that's, I mean, we can talk about, I guess. This book's not smart enough to have that conversation. Like, it's just not smart enough to have a conversation about eating meat or not eating meat or, like, animal rights. And so, like, that's a racist stereotype that just becomes a character. Then there's the Russian lady. I forget her name.
Korvachik, I don't know. She's less of a character. She doesn't show up as much.
So you know how in cartoons... She does
say...
you know how in cartoons when a Russian person is there, they say, strong like bear. Like my Dracula impersonation from the Halloween episode. just a caricature of a caricature. How in Russia, like the bears, right? Like we all draw Putin without a shirt on riding a bear before he became an international. I guess he was always an international pariah, but more of an international pariah. So she says strong like bear a lot.
Or anything like bear.
Yeah, everything is like bear. That's her go-to analogy. Yeah. And it's funny because you can imagine, because you have seen a cartoon, you can imagine a Russian accent saying like bear. And I
can imagine it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, over and over. The only time it pays off is when Sophie has spent so much time around these women that she adopts their mannerisms. She says that things are strong like bear. That's kind of funny because Sophie is not an old Russian lady. So you wouldn't expect Sophie to say strong like bear. Was it worth it? No. Was it funny? A little.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's another character?
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Let's talk about the adversaries. So there are forces of darkness that are trying to acquire souls before the death merchants can acquire them. And like, so probably the first thing... For a while,
they call them sewer harpies because they come from the storm sewers.
Yes. Because they're incapable of reading a book. Okay, I gotta talk about this.
Except for there is a guy who reads a book and knows everything about them.
Okay.
I don't know how they didn't find them in an internet search.
So, the lore of the world in this book is that you may be born, but just because you're born, you're walking around, and you're talking, and you're living your life, it doesn't mean you have a soul. You get a soul when you're ready for a soul. And so that's what the death merchants do. When a person finds their soul, They buy one of the objects from the shop, and there's just some force of providence in the background that makes sure that the right person is in the right place at the right time, except, when they're not for the plot of the book. And that's how you get your soul. And what is even a soul? I don't know. Now, he talks about the Tibetan Buddhist concept of bardo,
Yeah.
where the soul spends a transitory period of days between death and reincarnation, and he applies that to like the amount of time they have to collect the soul object, and like when they collect the soul object and it's in their safekeeping, things are okay, but if you don't get it before that period, then bad things happen. This is a weird lore thing. I think I liked it when I was a kid. I even like it now. I like this complicated approach to reincarnation. I like that there's this weird system in place. I like the urban fantasy of it all. But it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, it's not supposed to make a lot of sense, Ben. It's spiritualism. What even is a soul? What even is a soulless person? I don't know, Ben. I don't know.
Did you read...
But I know that it's important.
Did you read the acknowledgement or the thank you section of the book? The acknowledgements, I think?
No, Ben. Why would I read a single page more than I have to? I do the requirement, okay? I don't do extras. That's your job.
the acknowledgements, he specifically thanks somebody for mailing him a couple of books on Tibetan Buddhism, because his own research was not turning up enough, and he needed to know more about Tibetan Buddhism to write this book that doesn't in any way at all come even remotely close to representing anything about Tibetan Buddhism. I have no idea what the fuck he was researching.
He was researching Bardo. And the power. I hope that's how you say it.
That is not even a little.
The power! The power to keep you alive forever, Ben.
Not even a little. Is that right?
I thought of the Simpsons thing. For
Max Power?
Crap, what does he say? Fuck. I'm losing the quote in my head as I'm thinking about it.
In America, first you get the sugar, then you get the power, then you get the women.
Homer!
Okay, so there are antagonists, these creatures of the underworld that want to get the souls, because if they get the souls, they can convert them into power that will restore them, and then when they are fully restored, they can rise up and take over the earth. And there's a prophecy that one day the big death will return. Not just a death merchant, no, but the Grim Reaper will return.
Death with a capital D.
The
D's get
Luminatus.
degrees, and now D is in death. It's all wrapping together.
It's all full circle. This whole podcast is interconnected. Look for the subtle ways in which every episode links to the next. So in San Francisco, the main forces of darkness are the Morrigan, which is a threefold deity of raven-like women who wandered the Celtic battlefields and took souls like Valkyries. I'm not familiar with this particular myth, but
It's Celtic, I think, is what they said.
I trust him. I don't care enough to look it up right now.
And also, there's another one who is super important. He's the big bad at the end. It's going to be an epic showdown when this guy comes around. This guy is not to be trifled with. He's dead. Okay.
Now, I think the main problem I have, and this is definitely a case of me having matured, the main problem I have with the protagonists is that they all talk like Christopher Moore.
Yeah.
Like all of like the harpies are just like they're doing this thing like What's her name from The Exorcist? Reagan? What's the kid in
What?
The Exorcist?
I don't why would I know that, Ben?
I don't know. Okay, but you're familiar with the trope in The Exorcist where, like, she's possessed and she curses all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that's kind of what these things do. They're very crass and crude, and they talk about all the stuff they're gonna do to you, and f this, f that, and I'm gonna
Your
give
mom
you.
sucks cocks in hell or whatever.
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff. But it's all very Christopher Moore. Like they're very, like, I don't know, quippy. They're very quippy for creatures that don't understand what a car is. And I think that's the
Yeah.
joke. That's another thing that's going to come up a lot is like
So they're very Clarence Townsend.
that's a reference everybody understands.
Yeah. So when we
Famous
wrote a book,
literary figure Clarence Townsend.
Yeah, we had a villain who could regenerate, and so since he can regenerate, why not kick his ass over and over and over again until
he's no
they're
longer
no longer threatening? Yeah, and that's what these are. They will get their asses kicked over and over and over.
But the thing that bothered me is whenever the dialogue in the book, all of the dialogue, I think I was impressed with this when I was 20, and I have just aged out of it. It's all quippy and detached and sarcastic and ironic, and I just got so fucking sick of the hipster nonsense. I will admit, when I was 20, I listened to indie rock and I smoked clove cigarettes. I have gone through many
and
phases.
You wore sunglasses that were a few inches out from your normal glasses, and you had a little hat on.
I didn't wear normal glasses when I was 20 because I wasn't a nerd. I wear them now, though. But yeah, like I had my hipster phase, and this shit impressed me so much when I was in my hipster phase, and I cringe so hard at it now.
Well, it's like Marvel movies, right? It was funny the first few movies when they were all quippy guys, and then it was like, okay, I get it. Can we get
funny,
a different character now?
It's funny you should mention that because I've talked, like, I don't think you can underestimate the influence Joss Whedon had on urban fantasy. Because this book is 100% urban fantasy. All Christopher Moore stuff is urban fantasy. And it is like the Family Guy version of Joss Whedon dialogue. It's just a little bit more crass, a little bit more shocking, but it's that like quip a minute. Everybody's a pop culture machine. Everybody's referencing things all the time. And everything is like a subversion of expectations. It's just got that like Buffy the Vampire Slayer type of humor in that like you wouldn't expect the words vampire slayer to follow the word Buffy, because a girl named Buffy is usually
that it?
yeah, that's the joke.
Oh,
a girl named
okay.
Buffy is usually a bimbo, but like the problem is
I did not realize that because I've heard Buffy the Vampire Slayer
Exactly.
so often it's just normal now.
yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? That's kind of the problem, isn't it?
So we'd have to take it further and be like Chad Dingleton, the Vampire Slayer, to make the joke work now.
Yeah, kind of. And they have in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I don't know how much you've seen the show, but there's a character called Xander who is a Joss Whedon self-insert, and Xander has trouble with the ladies. He's a bit of a, dare I say, beta male, and it's the Charlie thing. Yeah, I didn't like the dialogue. Dialogue didn't work for me. Did work for me when I was 20. This is a case of me being older and I hope wiser. But it made the main antagonists not threatening. Because anybody who talks like that is a joke. Like, you know they're going to lose. You know they're not threatening. I don't really care that they're collecting souls. And then interspersed with the supernatural stuff is Charlie's job as a death merchant, which, as a death merchant, you see a lot of death. They have to go collect these artifacts from the deceased, usually near the time of their death, so they always run into the family, the grieving family. And when they run into the grieving family, they're usually invisible. Or they're not really noticed.
Not invisible, Ben. Just,
yeah, they always
you don't
pass their
see
stealth
them.
check.
Yeah.
And that's a power of the Death Merchant. When you're near an artifact for collection, nobody notices you. So you get to be a fly on the wall during a family's most intimate grieving moments. And I think this came from Christopher Moore's exposure to hospice workers. He thanks many hospice nurses in the acknowledgments. He seems to have obviously
You're welcome.
spent some time.
Buy me a breakfast sandwich, Christopher Moore.
I don't think he's going to buy you a breakfast sandwich after this one.
I don't think so either.
I don't think we're getting a new patron out of this one. But where I was going with that is the parts that were obviously taken from his interactions with the hospice nursing process feel very genuine and very touching and very grounded. And unfortunately, Austin Powers didn't have a moment where Austin learns how to accept the loss of his mother.
But I think we can all agree he should have.
And I think this is where the book gets so many props, because it does this roller coaster thing where funny, joke, sad. Funny, joke, sad. And it kind of tricks your brain where, like, because I was sad and now it's funny, it's really blending humor with heart.
Yeah, there's a lot of heart here.
There is actually a lot of heart
agree.
here. It just isn't blended in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's mint chocolate chip, mint ice cream, and you got chocolate chips on top, or a salad. It's a salad.
Yeah,
It's not a milkshake. It's a salad.
It's a parfait. The nuts
that is
are
a
on
hipster
top,
thing, right?
Yeah, only hipsters eat that. They definitely don't have them at McDonald's.
This is a fancy parfait, though. It's $7 more than your average parfait.
Yes,
it's all organic.
It's a parfait at a McDonald's in San Francisco.
Oh God.
I'm going to talk about San Francisco because I'm fucking sick of San Francisco by the end of this book. Because, like, every once in a while, he'll stop the book dead again to give you a brief message from the San Francisco Tourism Board about how there's, like, sushi jazz fusion places in this one part of the city, or like this is the gay part of the city, or this city has a lot of history. Yeah. Or this part of the city has a bunch of history with, like, Asian immigration and everything. And it's like, okay, I get it. This has really nothing to do with the book except to add to the page count, which I'm becoming, like, a little concerned has grown to, like, 200. and nothing has happened yet.
Hey, that's not true. He's had fights with the Morrigan. How do you say it again?
I was saying Morrigan.
Morrigan. Okay.
But since we're making the transition from talking about characters to talking about plot, I think this is a good place to stop for part 1 of the episode. So we'll resume next week with a discussion of the plot points and where that works and more often does not work. So look forward to that. In the meantime, of course, as always, if you want to contact us, we are on Twitter at WABpod, on Instagram at Words About Books Podcast. You can email us at wordsaboutbookspod@gmail.com. We have a Discord, links in the description. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/WABpod. And speaking of Patreon, we have to thank our Yacht Plan level patrons, and they are Spooky Shy with a Y, CHY on TikTok. We've got Jamie the Gravy Man, if you want the gravy blog, where Jamie is reviewing movies, mostly, but also cereal sometimes, for me especially, which I appreciate. We have Isekai Sensei Sama of the, and I'm going to give this my real college try here. That time I got reincarnated in the same world as an anime podcast. Also easier to find at animepodcasterreincarnation.com. And then last, but certainly not least, we have John Bierce, author of the Mage Errant series, The Rack, and a new project coming soon. He also has a Patreon where you can get access to his short stories and vote in polls for new short stories as they come out. So you should definitely go check all of those projects out. And if you want me to shout you out and your project, consider becoming a Yacht Plan tier patron. With that, I'll see you next week. I'm late on this episode. I just looked. I was like, this is gonna be a photo finish. I'm already 10 minutes late. God.